once again. Now that everything is fixed, everything is working. My name is author J.A. Freeman. I am actually Justin Freeman, an author based in North Carolina. I am reading tonight Solar Nemesis Alpha. This is the very first of my hopefully five-part science fiction fantasy novel dealing with universal eschatology, which is the ultimate fate of the universe. The main character in this story is Joanna Lovell and her friend Solomon Caldone. And I am just going to keep on reading this right now to make sure that you guys can understand that I am an author, even though I post a lot of video game content. I want to bring more attention to my books. So here we are. This is once again Solar Nemesis Alpha. And this is chapter 1, The Age of Earth Exodus, as you can see on the screen here. And I'm going to start reading now. So listen up and pay attention. Chapter 1, The Age of Earth Exodus. It's the year 2047, and the Earth is experiencing rapid global warming, but not for the reasons scientists had long predicted, as humanity actually began to curb its use of fossil fuels and limiting power consumption. Alternative fuels and electric vehicles became the main form of transportation, and mass transit was mandated among the most populous nations. Even a form of fusion was now available in limited industries, but many felt it was too little too late. Little did humanity know that the earth was warming for reasons they couldn't possibly imagine. Deep in the earth, an ancient seed had been planted, and it was slowly maturing. It would soon burst through to the surface, but that would be decades after where two of humans' saviors happen to be now. On a cloudless night in a rural town called Falkland, North Carolina, Theodore Lovell was putting the final touches on a prototype telescope he invented. He built his telescope into the family's home, and using his life savings and parts, he constructed himself based on a modern research and a theory about how he can get clear images further in space in real time. There was also a new type of spectrometer he created to detect a experimental substance he speculated existed. His 10-year-old son, Morris, and wife, Athena, were outside on the lawn watching theater on the second floor balcony with expectant eyes. Morris said, "Dad, do you believe this will work? They've had telescopes in space forever." Theodore said, "Not quite like mine. I created some new lenses along with a simulation program to see wavelengths that were hidden from us on the ground and a few other modifications in resolving images. It's a theory I've had for a while, and this telescope is going to test it." Morris said, "Mom was really upset you spent so much money on it." Athena said, "I was, but Theo's just been so excited about it." Theodore said, "Sometimes, Morris, you just have to believe in yourself and what you know." Now complete, Theodore told his son to turn on the exterior generator from the scope's balcony. Morris plugged in the generator and turned it on. The lights lit and the scope moved to its default position. Morris celebrated with his mother Athena, and the two hurried inside to see the 10-year dream come true. They entered the foyer and took the right stairwell to the second level and ran to the left, where the telescope's mount occupied half of the house. He gave his dad a strong hug before standing back, and Theodore gave his wife a long kiss. Athena said, "I'm very proud of you. It works, and we're the only family in Falkland that can boast a telescope built into their home." Theodore said, "Hopefully it'll help with the resale value if that day ever came." Athena said, "Then let's hope it doesn't. I love it here. Peaceful, quiet, and I live with the two people I love." Morris said, "Dad, can I take a look?" Theodore said, "Sure, son." He sat Morris in the chair and had him view the constellations. Morris could attest to his father's design, as he could see the cosmos with a clarity and magnification no other telescope could give them. As Morris was going over the constellations, he said, "Hey, Dad, what's this here? It's in the Kuiper Belt." "Let me take a look," said Theodore. Theodore had built a monitor into the telescope so that he could see what his son was looking at, and saw the object as well. Very small, too small to be an asteroid, and not following any of the traditional paths of other astral bodies. The disc-shaped craft was solid black and hard to see. Theodore magnified it on his screen and was able to see it was a spaceship. As Morris gazed through the eyepiece, Theodore saw on his screen that the craft wasn't under power but adrift. Theodore asked his son to leave the seat so he could see for himself through the eyepiece. He said, "Incredible. It looks like a spaceship. It's very faint, but I can see the reflective light on it. Pieces of debris are hitting it, and it's creating some type of light, like a light on the hull, like a force field." Athena said dismissively, "A spaceship? An alien spaceship? You sure it's not a deep space satellite?" "Positive." Theodore said, "Positive. But the ship looks adrift. Let's see if the simulator works as intended." His telescope had a computer program to simulate trajectories, so he left the telescope and plotted the craft's course. Theodore realized it would intersect the Sol system within 3 years at its current speed, but it would only pass between Jupiter and Saturn at its closest approach to Earth. Theodore wrote down the coordinates, made a digital copy, printed out 3 shots, and considered presenting it to his job tomorrow. His wife suggested that he leverage this information for promotion and a raise to recoup the money for their telescope investment. Theodore said he'd definitely do that, as this could be the most important discovery of mankind, and gave Morris the credit for spotting it. For tonight, however, Athena cooked a splendid dinner, and they ate as a family to celebrate the telescope's completion, but it never moved off the object as it tracked the spaceship's path. Theodore went to his aerospace company to try and find the same object using their devices, but it wouldn't show up. Apparently, Theodore's revolutionary optics revealed the camouflage the ship was using to remain hidden. In space, without precise coordinates, it could be easy to miss this important discovery. Theodore patented his optical lens, and he licensed his job to use them. He showed the pictures of the spaceship and shared his idea that this craft could possibly be intercepted and brought down to Earth for study. As Athena told him, Theodore only gave them the coordinates once his company promoted him and had him lead the project that he codenamed the Great Hope. In Theodore's time, humanity had been back to the moon and created a lunar base complete with citizens who lived there for close a decade mining resources for Earth. There was even a small colony on Mars after a mishap on the second attempt to land humans on the planet stranded the crew there for life. This was the apex of human space travel, but humanity was about to go much farther. Theodore's project was supposed to be an internal company project for his aerospace employer, but it had become clear that even Harrington Flight would have to ally with several other companies to realize the dream of bringing down this craft. One such company was H3 Engines, based off their helium-3 engines that made long-distance space travel possible. They were mining the element on the moon and pioneers in the nuclear fusion industry. H3 Engines struck an alliance with Harrington Flight for the Great Hope project. Next was Odin Reactors, which was a maker of nuclear power reactors on travel vessels, which was currently partnering with space cruise ship companies to keep them from refueling on the moon and operating for decades in space. These 3 companies started working on a joint space shuttle to reach the far depths of space where humanity had only sent satellites. The project was later given government funding once several patents and permissions were sought to send people that far into space. This craft's modules were built on Earth and assembled in secret on the moon, as it would be the largest spaceship ever launched and employ thousands to assist in its development. Once completed, the astronauts were selected, and 7 years after the alien ship sighting, the Great Hope launched. Theodore, Athena, and Morris all attended the launch via the Secret Command Center at Area 51. Morris was now 18, and he watched the shuttle launch with care as he was studying hard to become an Air Force pilot once he graduated high school. Secrecy was necessary as the news had been tipped off of a secret launch deep into space, but the government produced a cover story that this launch was going to be a prolonged human spaceflight mission to study Europa with an underwater drone. This cover was half true. There was a mission going to study Europa as well, and it was carrying the equipment for that mission, but also satellites and communication equipment to steer the alien craft to Earth. If that wasn't possible, the Great Hope crew would study it over the year it was to pass between the 2 gas giant planets. It took a year and 2 months for the spacecraft to reach that section of space, and once they arrived, they were able to attach the Great Hope to the hull of the alien craft. Experiments began right away, and the scientists discovered the hull's material was unlike anything on Earth, and later gave birth to an expansion of the periodic table with 6 new elements. Theodore Lovell was retired Marine, and since he'd been key to this discovery, he was given classified briefings to what they were discovering on this craft. Disappointingly, it was devoid of life, no alien bodies, but it did have technology the humans couldn't quite determine how it worked yet. The astronauts were able to tether the alien craft to the Great Hope and guided it to Earth for further study. 4 years after launch, Morris was 21 and finishing college, and Theodore had been promoted to an executive for bringing in record funding and good publicity for Harrington flight. His company decided to merge with several smaller companies that lent research to the Great Hope Project, and that brought a windfall for the Lovell family. However, among the companies Harrington Flight acquired, one brought a rather unscrupulous and greedy executive, Ian Wilshire. He lost his ruthlessly sought position as chief executive officer of Exo Habitats in the Harrington Flight acquisition to Theodore's promotion and harbored resentment ever since. The new company, Lovell Harrington Interplanetary, became a powerhouse thanks to the discovery, and Morris was enrolled into a pilot program with the company. As the Great Hope neared Earth, everything was going smoothly to deliver the alien ship to Area 51. However, upon entry to the planet's atmosphere, the alien craft inexplicably activated and nudged the Great Hope far off course and deep into the Marianas Trench. The government and mission control at both Area 51 and Houston, Texas, were keenly aware of where the craft landed and mourned the loss of life on the Great Hope that sank with the alien craft. However, a massive undertaking began to salvage the alien craft, or at least study it at those depths. All of the assets needed for this project were relocated to Andrews Air Force Base in Guam, and the company responsible for the Europa mission were now brought aboard to transition their research and resources to create a subsurface research station if necessary. It was necessary. Strangely, the craft became impressively weighty, so much so it wasn't able to be pulled out, and it was buried into the basin. Studying the material scraped from the craft, a new synthetic metal was formed to create the deep sea habitat station there and was loaded with scientific crew to the abyss. The craft's brief reactivation also helped H3 engines see how they worked and develop space jets that rode the propulsion of space and tripled the maximum distance current human technology could achieve. The advancement made by the United Nations member states, the 4 companies that led the research, and the consolidation of the industries around these advancements gave humanity its first real chance to travel the stars and widen their reach beyond the solar system. H3 engines simply became Engines Incorporated, and the best supplier of interstellar boosters, making the not only trips throughout the solar system routine, but talk was on the horizon of a manned crew to Proxima Centauri. Odin Reactors became Odin Electric, and Abysmal Research, the company that created the research vessel to study Europa and took the team to the ocean floor, became Oceanic Insight. With Lovell Harrington Interplanetary, these 4 companies took their shared research expertise and human resources and formed Tetrad Interstellar, that would later evolve into humanity's first interstellar corporation. With headquarters on the Moon and Mars, Tetrad was clearly becoming the dominant corporate entity on Earth and for humanity. Through much scheming, Ian Wilshire managed to become a top executive, eventually eclipsing Theodore Lovell, who was nearing retirement. But Wilshire wasn't done yet. After a decade since the crash on Earth, many technological advancements were made, and Morris was now 30 when the unthinkable happened. On January 16, 2065, the ring of fire in the Pacific Ocean exploded. It was followed by the eruption of every volcano on the planet, including the supervolcano at Yellowstone National Park. Earth was devastated by these eruptions, and billions died in the ensuing volcanic winter. The wealthiest families families were already living off world, either on the moon for vacation retreats or on the Martian colony, which had grown by 1,000 people. The majority of humanity still relied on Earth's resources, but it was becoming clear that the planet was no longer going to survive this calamity, and the governing leaders had to look to the stars. Quickly building a fleet of Exodus ships, many of which were already under construction for space tourism and just needed to be refitted for more crew and longer sojourns, the plan quickly became to evacuate Earth on these arcs. Thanks to his patented lensing technology, the Lovell family were honored with a place on one of these ships, as Theodore had transitioned to exoplanet research and was key to selecting habitable worlds for humanity to take root. His family were selected to head to the planet codenamed Harvest, and their ark carried that designation. As the ships left Earth, the poor, the unsuitable, and the infirm that were unlikely to survive in space were all left behind. There was much blood shed over their abandonment in the age of Earth's exodus. As humanity traveled through space, contact was lost amongst the 16 craft sent into the void. Some were never heard from again. Others restored communication after decades, and some have yet to be rediscovered if they're still functioning. The first to arrive at its destination was the Harvest Ark, as it was the nearest planet, the most occupied ark, and the likeliest place to have life. It was still 2 decades away with the current technology, and Theodore and Athena passed away in transit. Morris himself was now approaching his 50s and had grown into a council member on the ship, which was a new government for this would-be colony. Thanks to advances in Lovell's telescopic lensing, the planet did indeed end up being a garden world teeming with life, intelligent life. Primitive as they were, the native Phaeocians were in awe of the interstellar travelers and brought forth crops as gifts in worship of their new arrivals. Morris Lovell and the Ark Council negotiated 100,000 acres of land on Harvest from the native Phaeocians and began the arduous process of destroying the Ark to build their first city. In return, humanity taught the Phaeocians their advancements in medicine, technology, science, and everything from interstellar travel they learned from the alien craft via the Ark breakdown. Morris Lovell was elected the very first mayor of Oiabahi, the city of enlightenment in the natives' language. Morris retired after only a Phaeocian year, which was actually 2 Earth years, had his first child, a daughter, with a woman he'd grown close to on the sojourn to Harvest. Joanna Lovell was the first generation of humans on Harvest, and she was educated with her fellow humans in the first mixed class of native Phaeocians. Joanna and her generation never knew Earth outside of what their parents have taught her, and many never returned to their home world. It was only the 5th year of Joanna's life when Morris and the burgeoning human government learned of yet another successful Ark landing on the frozen and Yushan world of Yadoma through his connections with the Tetrad Corporation, which had established a headquarters on Harvest. Yadoma had enough oxygen and life to sustain a human colony, much like the continent of Antarctica once did, and the people from the Ark became friends with the native Yeti-like species that were 10 feet tall and muscular, but had intelligence and technology slightly more advanced than humanity. Propelled much further in a few years by humanity's arrival, relations soured as humanity asked for land in a warmer area of the planet. Conflict turned into outright war 10 years later, and humanity was capable of defending its colony, but it took the arrival of Joanna Lovell to quell the war. Other arks made contact, but their discovery was kept secret by the Tetrad Corporation, as they made technological advancements beyond what any corporation or government could manage. With a powerful network of satellites and having pioneered a form of interstellar communication, Tetrad became humanity's shadow government. As Tetrad grew, Ian Wilshire became Tetrad's treasurer, but he was arrested on Harvest for offering precious space on various arks to the undesirable for hefty sums during the Exodus. Morris Lovell discovered this operation, and Ian was jailed aboard the Harvest Ark. His son, Mortimer Wilshire, watched Ian's downfall and struggled to rise as an executive at the cutthroat company, but managed to supersede Ian's level. In revenge, Mortimer began to systematically swindle funds from Theodore's parents to his family's accounts and criminally tried to infringe on the rest. Morris Lovell fought back, and the animosity between the two affected families for the next generation. At Tetrad's headquarters on Harvest, Mortimer became chief financial officer. His skill with finance and willingness to engage in criminal behavior to eliminate his rivals propelled his ascent and eventual downfall. Later in life, Mortimer was arrested for embezzlement and died in prison. By the time of Mortimer's imprisonment, his son Nathaniel Wilshire was now a senior executive in his own right, and for his sake not involved in his father's crimes. He did profit from his father's endeavors with a privileged upbringing and the best education, but he always heard Mortimer talk of destroying the Lovell name because of how Ian's fall affected his early years. Nathaniel envied the Lovell family for their role in the discovery of the alien craft and was raised alongside Joanna, who he knew to be brilliant. While she chose a different path in life, Nathaniel soon learned why Mortimer had a deep distrust of the Lovell family. Apparently, Theodore took something from the alien craft while they explored it on the ocean floor. Mortimer never learned what it was, but it hampered research for years and gave Theodore leverage to make many future patents and discoveries. Mortimer felt that the company his father helped found was entitled to all belongings of the craft, and Theodore's theft of it gave his family undue credit for his technological discoveries. Nathaniel never figured out what it was Theodore stole, but whatever it was, he knew it must have been passed on to Joanna. Joanna made friends on Harvest in her childhood days, and all of them grew into successful humans and Phaeocians in their own rights. She loved Ashira, a Phaeocian in her biology class, who had dreams of becoming an interspecies doctor and who had the highest grades in her class, with Joanna a close second. Growing up with her was Joanna's direct link to Phaeocian culture and lifestyles, as they'd all been born during the age of arrival, as the Phaeocians called it. The Phaeocian people were clearly enamored with their alien friends, and natives that could boast of having a human friend was immediately lifted in high esteem and socioeconomic status by their race. Learning how the alien technology worked, and in Ashira's case, reading their science books, helped Phaeocian students leapfrog their peers lacking this access. Though Ashira was a kindred spirit, Joanna's closest friend was a man named Solomon Caldone, also born on Harvest, whose academics was lacking, but his physical prowess proved very useful for the human diaspora navy. When war on Yodoma broke out, Solomon immediately enlisted with the Marines and shipped out only days after basic training was complete. Joanna knew why Solomon was eager to join the war effort, and it wasn't due to being gung-ho, but his sister Alexis was very ill. At age 19, she experienced juvenile onset of motor neuron disease. Joanna used her dwindling funds to assist their family, and Solomon appreciated her help, but he knew of another way to assist her. With her prognosis looking bleak, Solomon signed up for extended family benefits the HDN were offering as an incentive to fighting on Yodoma, which brought her some time. Alexis, heartbroken her older brother was risking his life for her, cried at his departure and prayed for his safe return. Joanna decided to see to it Solomon would return and enlisted too, but far away from combat in a military intelligence role. She used her rank and computer skills to pull off a lot of illegal maneuvers to keep Solomon away from high-risk operations while on active duty. Joanna was a prodigy in computer technology whose skills were unrivaled even by Tetrad standards. She was highly sought after by the human diaspora Navy, even though she'd been in trouble with the law and was already a convicted felon by the time of her enlistment. One of her more brazen acts nearly got her dishonorably discharged, as she routed Solomon's unit to a relatively unimportant theater sector to serve as her personal escort into an Inusian cave. There, Joanna found a whisper box, technology only she could understand and activate to help break the Inusian encryption. The information kept inside brought a swift end to the war, and though her actions were completely frowned upon, Joanna was honorably discharged and given commendation for bringing the conflict to a close. While Alexis' condition deteriorated, Solomon struggled to care for her as he couldn't find suitable work post-war and his parents passed on. Joanna kept them afloat, paying for in-home care for Alexis and even helped Solomon find work. Solomon enrolled in college to get a better job, and Joanna decided to go into business herself as a freelance crypt analyst and computer consultant. Surprisingly, demand for her skills soared, with talk of her single-handedly ending the Inutian War. She was doing so well that she eventually caught the attention of an old rival. Joanna had become well versed in her lost revenue from her grandparents' patents. I'm sorry. Joanna had become well versed in her lost revenue from her grandfather's patents, and with her parents' death on harvest, Joanna plotted her own elaborate revenge to create a company to rival Tetrad. She had everything planned out and needed a way to Earth. Even though the government and the pre-Tetrad companies picked the alien craft clean as best they could, she knew she had one thing to truly give her full access to the ship's technology. That technology could give her what she needed and to finally supplant Tetrad and get even with the Wilshire family. Sorry for reading so hurriedly and with all the breaks in there, but I am trying to read it in a way where you can understand it and make it clear. This was chapter 1, The Age of Earth's Exodus, and I may continue on with chapter 2, but at this particular moment, I'm going to stop the video here. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to post it to my YouTube channel at author J.A. Freeman. So please head over there if you want to read this or listen to this again.